Hello, I'm Krasi. I'm Sidereal Astrologer, and I will talk about Gemini, the zodiacal sign and the constellation. I'm Sidereal Astrologer because I use the fixed Sidereal Babylonian zodiac, which shows the real astronomical situation on the sky, literally everything that is happening on the sky, including the images of the constellations, the shapes of the constellations, the fixed stars, is to be seen on the fixed Babylonian sidereal zodiac. We have 88 constellations which all interact with each other. We have 12 constellations which are on the zodiac belt around the sun, and they all interact with each other, they all influence our destinies. In the previous two videos, I spoke about Aries and Taurus. Now you will hear about Gemini. Now, Gemini is the third astrological sign of the zodiac, originating from the constellation Gemini, where the sun transits approximately between May 21st and June 21st every year. Now, why Gemini, the sign and the constellation, is so important, it is because the point of the spring equinox is in Gemini, in the fifth degree of Gemini. Secondly, why Gemini is so important, it is because the Milky Way passes through Gemini and Sagittarius. Starts from Sagittarius, the fifth degree, and ends up in the fifth degrees of Gemini. I will develop this a little bit more in this presentation. Now, the constellation of Gemini is having some bordering constellations, which are Lynx, Auriga, Taurus, Orion, Canis Minor, Cancer. And it is lying precisely between Taurus on the west and Cancer on the east. Now, in Mesopotamia, in ancient Mesopotamia, uh, the, in astronomy, because at that time astronomy and astrology were absolutely linked like one. The two stars, which are representing the two twins of the Gemini, Castor and Pollux, were known as the great twins. The names sounded like Mumash, Tabba, Gaugau in ancient Akkadian Babylonian language. The twins were considered small gods in ancient Mesopotamia and the, they were called the one who has occurred from the underworld and the mighty king. Uh, Both names were synonymous of Nergal. Now, the epos of Gilgamesh. It is the oldest known poem of Mesopotamia, where Enkidu and Gilgamesh were known to be the two twins, the Gemini. Gilgamesh was first why it is so important to know the mythology behind every astrological sign and constellation. It is because only when we know the mythological um, pattern, the mythological idea behind every legend and constellations, then we will know what this sign will give to the person when in the horoscope, when on the ascendant, when on the meridian, when the sun there. Especially important now is to know when Gemini is so important because of the summer solstice point there. We will know what this sign in particular will give to our um, era. Now, as I said earlier, they used to be called the big twins, which are known as Castor and Pollux on the sky, which are very visible actually, especially in the winter. The name Um, Gilgamesh, who was one of them, is translated from Akkadian as the human sun, and the Enkidu, the other one, is translated as made from Enki, and Enki is one of the rulers of the earth. So here the idea of the importance of Gemini, seeing that we have the repetitive model of sun, a son of God and son of the human son. It is about the human nature represented by one of the twins, Enkidu, and the divine represented by Gilgamesh. Being so pure, if you know the entire legend, Enkidu will be represented by the divine Castor, and Gilgamesh will be Pollux. What we should know when about Pollux and Castor is that Castor gives purity, knowledge. He will give spirituality to the person. If you would have Castor rising on the ascendant, and Pollux being martial will give martial characteristics to the person if you have Pollux on the ascendant. Now, that is why it's so important to know exactly what the two main stars mean in the zodiacal sign and constellation Gemini. Um, Now, on the clay tablets, continuing about the mythology, Gilgamesh, who is Pollux, the Martian, would be seen with horns, and because he's two-thirds god, and Enkidu will be seen with a hairy head and naked. Above them are the sun and the moon, which is to say that we connect them with the sun and the moon. Enkidu, being mortal, will be the moon, and Gilgamesh will be the sun. Once again, this gives additional characteristics to Castor and Pollux on the sky. Talking about the Milky Way, as I initially explained, that the Milky Way starts in the fifth degrees of Sagittarius, excuse me, and exits from the fifth degrees of Gemini. Um, the Milky Way has a very special role in the horoscope. When having the Milky Way passing through the ascendant, having the Milky Way on the meridian makes people, gives power to the horoscope, because the Milky Way acts like a very powerful fixed star. So this is very important to know. Um, the Milky Way passes through the center of the celestial sphere. This situation can cause accept can give power to the whole chart, but can give an unexpected rise to the native. Can give exactly like a very powerful fixed star, as I said. It could mean that the person is descending from a very high spiritual hierarchy. This is the role of the Milky Way, because the Milky Way is full with very bright stars, which all have very bright meaning. So it also will mean that the person has a very special spiritual role on earth in this particular reincarnation, special role for the mankind. According to Michael Scotus, the position of the Milky Way, uh, exit or beginning, as I said, in one's chart, shows from where the person comes, which place in the cosmos. Now, this is again why Gemini is so important as a sign and also constellation. Now, the ruler of Gemini is Mercury. You know that Mercury is linked to our intelligence, to the brain, to the creativity. He is Hermes, and is responsible for the letters, for the intellect, for the research, for the speech, for the speaking, for the brotherhood, for the media, commerce, geometry, is the old ruler of the astrologers. Um, for the letters, measuring, hearing, interpretation. He also gives wisdom, and governs the brothers, the young children, the markets, the banking, created builders of temples, sculptures, the statues, doctors, administrators, secretaries, counselors, speakers, philosophers, mathematicians, um, people, depending, of course, where Mercury is located in the horoscope and in which heliacal phase exactly Mercury is, because you know that Mercury is very near the Sun, and the biggest distance that he can reach from the Sun is 28 degrees. His maximal elongation, so to say, is not um, far than further than 28 degrees. Now, this planet actually indeed gives to the person, can give to the person diverse, many diverse activities, and the occupation of one of the native depends on the position of Mercury in the zodiac, and in which house. How is Mercury aspected by other planets? Is he afflicted, or he is receiving beneficial um, influence aspects from the benefic planets like Jupiter and Venus, for example. Um, now, this planet can create people which like to perform, dancers, artists, people that could be uh, actually many professions are linked to Mercury, and as I said, in order to find out which exactly profession will the person be will be occupied with, you need to see how Mercury is situated. Now, from the body parts, he would manage, rule hands, shoulders, fingers, joints, abdomen, hearing, tongue, intestines. Now, the appearance that he gives to the person, he makes tall people, not with a big body. The face is narrow, the nose is slightly curved and sharp. Eagle's nose could be. The look is sharp, shows very strong intellect, because you know that Mercury is linked to the intellect and creativity of the person. Often the eyes will be brown, the hair will be dark. The lower standing twin of the constellation is too restless, circumstantial, lying. He is silent when he closes his mouth. The legs are long, the hands rather short and moving continuously even when standing peacefully on his chair. Twins are not only movable, but externally, but internally, according to um, ancient writings. Their mind is forever committed. The sign gives scientists and excellent speakers, and most important, um, Mercury was the ruler of the astrologers and still is, together with Uranus. The sign Gemini controls the lungs, arms, and shoulders. Important to know is that Mercury should Gemini, excuse me, should overcome its selfishness. This is one of the negative features, and um, cultivate the sense of duty and self-esteem. On the meridian, if Gemini is on the meridian, gives strong desire for the person to appear visibly in full. Tends, when having Gemini on the meridian, tends to be very artistic, intellectual, with free opinion, and indeed highly intellectual. On the descendant seventh house, if you have Mercury, it gives fertility in thoughts. Um, could be that people with Gemini on the descendant would often lack sense of responsibility. On the Imum Celi, on the lower meridian, people could be a bit too impulsive, but they will be able to achieve a lot in certain areas. Now, I will give you a brief description of the sign by degrees. In the ancient astrology, especially when we take into consideration the ancient sidereal zodiac, which is purely astronomical, showing exactly literally the situation on the starry sky, every single degree matters. So, the first 2 degrees of Gemini, when we divide the sign into 30 equal degrees, every sign is divided into 30 equal degrees. These two first degrees are called windy. When on the ascendant, people become businessmen who travel a lot and often will live abroad. This is also linked to the nature of Mercury, who will be traveling a lot. These people could be musicians, and some of them will love science. Then, further, the third degree is called the southern wind, could give mixed destiny with ups and downs. From the third to the fifth degrees, uh, the star gives businessmen and people who could become leaders. There you will have also the projection of the fixed star Betelgeuse. Then from the first to the sixth degrees, people, the degrees are called bright and called tranquility by the ancient writers. Uh, People could be navigators of ships, airplanes, who again would travel a lot, once again because of the nature of Mercury who rules Gemini. Uh, of course, in order to give exact profession description to the person, you need to see whether these degrees are afflicted, which planet is there, and if, for example, Saturn will be there, the natives could be herbalists, pharmacists, writers, priests, but they will become famous and known. Many of them will be experienced in astrology and mathematics. The next degree, the sixth to seventh, 1 degree, uh, they're not very happy. This could give some problems to the person. From the 7th to the 12th degree, the term of Jupiter is rising, and this term uh, gives really achievements to the person, um, could give really good characteristics to his character, could give people who achieve a lot in a very knowledge based profession. The, the 8th and from 8th to the 10th degree, people could become sculptors. Uh, People would be working with marble and stone. From the 11th to the 12th degrees, people will be artists, mimes, shouts, circus trainers, acrobats, comedians. These are very artistic degrees in Gemini. Um, People from the 4th to the 12th degrees. I know that you see some that we already spoke about the 4 degrees, but this has to do with the projections of other constellations which interact with each other. That's why don't be surprised that we already mentioned the 4 degrees, but they have additional influence from additional constellations. So from the 4 to the 12 degrees, these degrees are called moderation because gives people who have moderate and balanced minds. From the 13 to the 15 degrees, people having this on the ascendant will be having strength and reason. Then until the 18 degrees, from the 13 to the 18 degrees, you have the projection of the satyrs. Well, this is typically for people who will become athletes. These people could have some negative effects on this because they could enter into conflicts without need. The term of Venus is from the 13th to the 17th degree, and these terms are called happy, beautiful, and colorful. This gives happiness and good luck to the person. From the 16th to the 17th degrees are empty, 19th to the 20th degree. There will be people who will have profession linked to water, um, but they will have changeable character. There will be called chameleons, people which will act like chameleons. On the 21st degree, Sirius is rising. There he will be projected. This could give visibility to the person, could make people really also spiritual and visible to the society, but some of them could be greedy. From the 21st to the 22 could be overestimated people. To the 24th, actually from the 18th to the 24th degree, uh, these are very beneficial degrees to the bone because this can give power to the people. And then from um, when if 20 the fifth, if the 25th degree is rising on the ascendant, the people could be boxers, athletes, wrestlers. Some of them could become soldiers. This has to do with the Martian term on the ascendant. And this is exactly where Castor arises, which is the twin's head. You remember, um, Enkidu is projected where um, Castor arises. From the 26th to the 28th degree, uh, these degrees could cause earthquakes and could be a bit too stormy also for the life of the person. They could cause changes and some negative effects. From the 25th to the 30th degrees, these are the last 5 degrees, the last term of the Gemini sign. This term is ruled by Saturn, and these particular degrees are called obedience. This could cause some difficulties to the natives, could create that the natives are orphans. Some of them could become soldiers, but not higher in the hierarchy of the soldiers. Now I listed now the degrees of the Gemini and exactly what each degree could give to the native. It is very important that you take them into consideration when you want to make good analysis of someone's horoscope, of someone's natal chart. Um, this was the literal, the astronomical view of the sign Gemini, which originates from the constellation Gemini. And this is to say that every constellation matters, not only the sign, that we should take into consideration also the constellations which interact with each other. This was about Gemini. I will continue the series of describing the 12 zodiacal signs in the next video. Thank you very much. I'm Krasi Sidereal Astrologer. Thank you.